So talking about who can apply, just one thing that you will need to know is that if your chapter is in rejuvenation, you are not able to apply for funding. So the rejuvenation has to be completed before you can apply. Also, for applying, chapters need to meet at least the minimum chapter standards as outlined in the charters that have been signed with each one of the chapters. So those two important things to know about who can apply. The next thing is what do we fund? And sometimes people tell me this is confusing, but it's not. We fund three main types of projects. Let's say we fund small projects up to $3,500. Those are dedicated for small events, a small project that the chapter has, and you can apply for that anytime, all year round. And then we have medium scale funding projects up to $15,000. And these projects will typically need to be completed within a year time. And then what we call the large scale funding projects are up to $30,000 and we give you 2 years to complete this type of project. Okay, so those are the three main types of funding. You can apply for them anytime, but they're a little bit, let's say, different on the way they are selected, and I'll talk about it in just a minute. So now that you know who can apply and what we fund, then what do we look for on Beyond the Net? Of course, all the projects have to be in line with ISOC strategic objectives. And we look for projects that provide equal internet access for everyone. So talking about who can apply, just one thing that you will need to know is that if your chapter is in rejuvenation, you are not able to apply for funding. So the rejuvenation has to be completed before you can apply. Also, for applying, chapters need to meet at least the minimum chapter standards as outlined in the charters that have been signed with each one of the chapters. So those two important things to know about who can apply. The next thing is what do we fund? And sometimes people tell me this is confusing, but it's not. We fund three main types of projects. Let's say we fund small projects up to $3,500. Those are dedicated for small events, a small project that the chapter has, and you can apply for that anytime, all year round. And then we have medium scale funding projects up to $15,000. And these projects will typically need to be completed within a year time. And then what we call the large scale funding projects are up to $30,000 US, and we give you 2 years to complete this type of project. Okay, so those are the 3 main types of funding. You can apply for them anytime, but they're a little bit, let's say, different on the way they are selected, and I'll talk about it in just a minute. So now that you know who can apply and what we fund, then what do we look for on Beyond the Net? Of course, all the projects have to be in line with ISOC strategic objectives, and we look for projects that provide equal internet access for everyone, projects that help people not only understand why open standards are important, but also how to use them. Not always easy to understand those standards, and to help more people take part in internet governance. We have many initiatives in that sense, and so those are, let's say, the 3 main types of projects that we support. As you can see, it's quite broad, because it goes from governance, from technology to access to development. So the categories are broad, but that's because the program is global and anyone can apply from any of the regions, and the needs are different from one region to the other. So what do we prioritize when we receive and read the applications that come in? So we look for projects or issues that affect the internet in the national, regional, or global level, for ideas that can be replicated within a topic or across regions. Well, this is really a strong point that we would like to have several chapters collaborating in one project. We have often projects on the same topic and in different regions, and we would like to see projects coming from chapters working together. So collaboration among chapters is another important thing, like it is collaboration between chapter members. I like to say that we do, or the selection committee does not like stand-alone applications. So collaboration among the chapter members, it's extremely important, because you cannot do it all in your own. You know that the project takes time. You're doing it on a volunteer basis. You have your own life, you have your own professional life, and then you have ISOC, and I know you are passionate about it, and I know you want to do well, but you need help, because I have seen projects fail because people could not do it all. So, and by collaborating with one another, we're learning from the skills of the different members that you have in the chapter. And of course, we look also for projects that have or demonstrate long-term sustainability. We often ask what happens after the ISOC funds are over. Does the grantee, does the chapter has an option, has a plan? And I think this is something that Jane will mention too. But we have several projects that continued after the funding was over, and I can see that Alex from Senegal is here and is one of the examples of a project that started back in 2005, if I'm not mistaken, and it is still going on and growing. One last thing about the application and what you need to know. We have developed the full eligibility criteria. So, a few important points. The chapter must have not received funding for the same project from any other Internet Society program. So let's say if you apply for chapter small grants, you cannot use that funding to a large project. Or if you receive funding from the region, it's preferable that you not use it in the same project as Beyond the Net. The other thing that is important, well, I've just mentioned, the chapter needs to have completed all previous projects. So if you receive funding in 2015 and you want to apply now 2016, let's make sure that you have completed all the reporting and that the project is about to be completed. This is an important guideline. I didn't write it there, but it's fully on the website. Another important thing: project management costs should not exceed 15% of the total project awarded, but they are accepted. This is something new for those that were familiar with the previous program, the community grants program. Okay, and one last thing. You are able to apply for chapter small projects all year round, and those small projects are approved as they come along. It's a discussion between the regional teams, and so the approval process is quite quick because they are small. And they don't require a very strong evaluation. And for medium and large projects, the next deadline is the 15th of September this year. Okay, so with that, I will stop here. Maybe just one thing: applications will need to be submitted online via a platform called Zoom Grants, and you just need to log in there with your data, like your name, your chapter ID, and so on. So it's one step, and then you go into the application and you answer a set of questions. And I'll pause here. I'm sorry, it took a little bit too long, but I will answer any questions you may have.
So Ilda, we have some questions in the chat. This is Jean. Do you want to first address those questions? I can go through some of them with you, yeah?
Yeah, okay. Let's.
So let me ask you first, will you share the presentations later? I think the answer is yes, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, great. So there was also a question, Ilda, about what rejuvenation means. Can you explain what rejuvenating a chapter means?
Okay, that's when the chapter is not meeting the chapter needs, the chapter chart that has been signed with ISOC. There can be many scenarios, and it's a process that is done between the regional development managers and the chapter, and it's the chapter development manager that will contact the chapter whenever there is an issue.
Okay, so another question for you that had come up: if there is no chapter, may they apply? May a group of people? This is actually coming up, Ilda, more and more in the US and Canada as well, with our First Nations communities, the Indigenous populations. So where there is no chapter, say say the Navajo Nation, which is a sovereign in and of itself in the United States, separate from the US federal system, but part of it, or in Canada where you have the First Nations, they do not have chapters, but there are some really great innovative projects like an ISP community network in Northern Ontario. Are they allowed to apply?
Yes, they are allowed to apply. We give the chance to members to apply where there isn't a chapter presence. What I would advise them to do is to contact me with just a simple draft of the project. They can contact me, or they can contact you, someone from ISOC, and Jane is actually part of the selection committee, so she knows how it works. But definitely they can apply if there isn't a chapter in the.
And if there is a chapter, Ilda, how does the application have to be agreed by the entire chapter, or how does that work? That's one of the questions.
If you are a chapter member and you have a project idea, you need to contact the chapter president and discuss with him, and then submit the project. As I said, last time it works quite well. Last time we had 4 project applications from South Africa. It was another country with 3 applications. And so where in one of them, the chapter was fully involved. And then in another one, it was like the chapter was overlooking what was done. So the chapter needs to support the project.
Does anyone have any question for Ilda about the topic of the chapter approving the application? I think, Ilda, this could be complicated for some people. Yeah, I think, is it approval by the chapter, or is it agreement that the people managing the project can go ahead? I think there's some concern about who's managing the project if it's agreed, right?
Yeah, so that needs to be agreed with the chapter. Logically, the group of people that is submitting the project will be the ones managing the project, and in case there is any issues, the chapter needs to be involved somehow. We have a similar case, for example, in Pakistan, where a project is run by a group of people, and they report like every 3 months or so to the chapter about the activities. And in some cases, they need expertise from some of the chapter people, and they participate on the project. So they're not doing the project, but they support it fully. They support the idea of the project.
Some chapter boards need to approve it. And so the question is, if the boards do not meet very frequently, how do they get approval?
Then you need to contact me. It can happen in some cases, and we are discussing it internally. So if you come across a case like that, just write to me or write to the chapter development manager, and we'll discuss it internally, and we'll see what we can do.
Okay, another question, Ilda, in the chat. Is there a limitation on the number of projects one country or chapter can submit to get them funded?
There is no limitation on the number of projects, but there are chances that only 1 or 2 projects get approved, depending on the other proposals that are received. So if we receive, we have received 30 applications. 10 of them are approved, and then we are undecided between 1 or 2 applications. We are going to give priority to a country that has not received funding.
Okay, there's another question, Ilda, about whether or not there's a specific financing program for gender issues.
There isn't a specific program for gender issues, but it can simply be submitted via Beyond the Net.
And Ilda, as you said earlier, chapters can work together, yes?
Yes. It's actually something that we trying to move forward, collaboration between chapters, because we noticed that there are very similar projects in the different parts of the world, and we need to take advantage of that knowledge that is right now in separate parts.
It's also a good way to scale. I think this question came from the Mujeres and Politica, so I'm assuming that this is across perhaps Latin, Central, South America, maybe?
Yeah.
Question.
Lui habían comenzado.
Okay. Any other questions?
There's a question in French.
Oui.
Pour un chapitre, go ahead, you see it there.
Let me see. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, it looks like you're asking from Joel, yeah? Or Joel, if you can have projects across a country, the same project, across different zones in a country. I think the answer might be yes.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful if you could have a project that is implemented in different parts of the country. Of course, you have always to be careful with that type of project because sometimes they are quite hard to manage. But it's and they have to be well planned. But it's possible to have a project that goes around the whole country.
There's also a question from Constantine if there's a framework, ILDA, for project management, a specific template we use.
No, we don't have a specific framework. We just give you a template for a timeline, just as an idea. But people are free to use their own framework, timelines, whatever suits them best.
Okay, another question for you. Can someone apply from a chapter for small and medium project at the same time?
Yes, it's possible to have a small project and a medium and large running at the same time. On the other hand, it's not possible to have a medium and a large running at the same time. But a small project and a large, medium, it's possible. We have that all the time.
There is a question, and I think you've answered it, Ilda, but it's can someone get a project funding if they're an NGO and not a chapter? But I think you've answered the question. If there's a small NGO, they should try and talk to the chapter, yes?
Yeah, and if there is no chapter present, they should write to us.
Ilda, there's a very good question about for collaborative projects coming from Buba in Senegal. If there are two chapters putting in a proposal, how does that work? Is it both chapters putting in the same proposal? Is it one chapter putting in the proposal together? What do you suggest?
It's one chapter putting in the proposal, and we had, I think, one proposal like that last time. So one chapter will be, let's say, the main chapter, and then you see it's only one proposal.
There's another question about can ISOC funding be used as a complement for a larger project? And that one I think is a big yes. Yeah, we would hope so. We wouldn't want you just to rely on ISOC. Grow your funding, yeah?
Yeah. Actually, we don't ask for, let's say, an initial support. So it's not mandatory, but it's definitely welcome. Especially if you want your project to last long. Okay.
I think we've answered most. Okay, there's one more question from Constantine. Is there a history of chapter funding for the projects that have been funded? This means, is there a list that gives examples?
Definitely, yeah. There is on the net web page. Very nice stories about projects. I will send it to you.
Okay, we need you a little closer to the microphone. So you're saying that yes, there is a list, and we'll send the link. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, there's another question. Can they apply for project funding this year before the deadline, which I believe is, when is the deadline, Ilda?
So the deadline for the medium and large project is 15th of September. So they need to submit before that. And for small projects, they need to be submitted before the end of November.
Okay, we lost you a little bit. So it's 16 September for medium and small.
Yeah,
Okay, and the next one is what?
it's end of November
End of November for the big ones, right?
for the small ones.
Small. Okay, so can you repeat, because we can, there's some background noise again. So 16 September for what size projects?
Okay, so 15th of September.
15, 15.
Yeah, can.
Okay, 15 September.
For medium and large. And for small chapter of project, it's the 30th of November.
But tell me something, if you have a small project, you said it's almost all the time, right? So if I had a meeting in October where I needed $2,000 to help run the meeting, I could apply anytime, right?
Yeah, you can apply anytime.
Okay. Ilda, there's one more question here.
Yeah.
I want to know if any chapter has an unfinished project. I'm not sure I understand 100% that question, but anyway, please give us a link to the database for the finished projects. Ilda said she would do that, so yes.
Yeah, it's you can write to me directly, John. And I'll check. We can pause here and actually go over to you, Jane, to talk about the background noise.
Sure, can you share the presentation, Ilda?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll do that right now.
And hello to all. It's a very short presentation, and we know that many of you are very good at project planning, so this is a very generic discussion. And so for those of you that don't know me, my name is Jane. My last name is Coffin. If you need to email me, you can find me on the ISOC staff list, or it's just CO, double F as in Frank, IN at isoc.org. I work on a lot of infrastructure projects, everything from Internet Exchange Point, and now we're trying to scale community networking projects, anything from that can be fixed, Wi-Fi, wireless, whatever you like, because we're trying to expand the definition of community networking from our side, because before we had only seen it as wireless, and now we see it as much more. And that's thanks to people like Peter and Eric who are on the call, who do work at Razamatica and Oaxaca, or community networking side. And as many of you know, the communities are the critical thing, and that's why we're so grateful to many of you that run the chapters and or run projects in your countries. So, Ilda, you can click down to the next slide. So we'd like to give you some information about a strategy that we often use. It is not the only one we use. There's an international organization in Canada called IDRC. Oops, hang on. And IDRC has an approach called outcome mapping. And so we've been looking at the use of outcome mapping over the years, and we've used it specifically when we help develop an interconnection and traffic exchange project that has been ongoing around the world. I would say the strongest projects we have are in Africa and Latin America with respect to IXPs. And so we're using this mapping approach, and I'll show you a mapping approach in the picture in a minute. But if you look at this, it's a strategic approach where we know that maybe ISOC is a catalyst, or we can help start something, and that you all may be implementing yourselves or with others. So this is a strong collaborative approach to map partners and look at how this is sort of a collaborative impact together. So this is an influence along a value chain. It's something we've been looking at as trusted neutral experts, where you have input activities, outputs, outcomes, impact. But if you see this value chain to the right, it's a circle. So I think circle is much better than just a straight line for all of us to understand. It's about making those contacts, finding the champions, strategizing together, re-strategizing, and coming up with a way forward. And doing something that a good colleague of mine used to call breaking glass, where you shouldn't be afraid to you shouldn't be afraid to have something that you believe needs to be re-strategized or redone. So Ilda, if you can click down to the next slide. Can you go down? Next one, down. Down, down. Next one. There, perfect. Okay, so if you are working as a team together to try and figure out how to create the greatest impact, you're not the only one working in this community. So part of the collaborative approach under the influencers and the stakeholders map is to map out who those people are that you need to reach and how to reach them. So for us, we had looked at development organizations, and this is for Africa, African network operators, IXP operators, the people that drive content, because you need content running over your network in order for it to also be more valuable and to grow your own ecosystem, your internet ecosystem in a country. We had a look at other providers, of course, and policymakers and regulators, because it's critical that, and of course, the civil society and other factors in your environment. This, of course, I do want to remind again, is just for a specific project that we've been working on internally, but that many of you may know, because it has to do with the African Peering and Interconnection Forum, the Internet Exchange Point work we've done in Africa, but also work we've done in the Middle East and Central Asia, and moving into lots of countries in Latin America as well, where we look at the partners we can work with and what those clusters of partnership look like, so that you focus around your mission, but you go out in this hub spoke, like the internet, right? Which is not only recursive, but it is a self-healing network, because you're trying to figure out who you can work with in that collaborative, almost train the trainer approach to sustain the project with you or eventually take over. Because if you go to the next slide, Ilda. Yeah. So here's a simple identification of some of the factors we're using with the building a sustainable project, and using that outcome mapping strategy as well. I think so many of you know that you have, and you do this with the chapters all the time, you have to build this community, your communities. You enable that community, you train trainers and train each other, whether you're building an antenna, you're setting up a policy session, you're not going to always be the person there. So you've got to identify your champions, enable that community by building trust with your community and with each other, train to train each other. This is the train the trainer approach used in so many places. I say plan together, which means put your ego away. You're not always going to be the one and only. We like to think of this as a collaborative approach. And this is where we've seen great success, where we come in and we turn it over to somebody else. And what I mean by turn it over is train someone to train other people so that we can step away and that ecosystem can grow. Connect and connect is just continuously introducing people to each other. I do this all the time. If you ever need assistance or help with connecting to other people, just ask, because that's where we see this the strength of the community growing. From the strategic perspective, it's important to do this together and to communicate. If you have an idea on your own, it's hard to create that community of trust unless you're sharing it and there's joint buy-in, that sustainability. You've got to articulate your objectives, obviously implement what you need to do by operationalization and doing it. Another key thing that I think many people are afraid to say, but it does happen, you have to assess where you are and re-strategize. Don't be afraid to start over or redo the project strategy. The key thing about what we've seen from a strategic perspective is that things change, environments change. And let me give you a specific example. We've been working on a project in Bolivia, which is a landlocked country in South America. And in that country, we had, I think, 3 ministers of communications in 2 years. So we started to work on a project. We incorporated briefing the government, but there was a new minister, so we had to start over. We continued on the project. There was a new minister. We had to start over a little bit. But the entire time we're engaging with a broad community, and that's the benefit of that map I showed you of all the stakeholders. If one of your stakeholders changes, you still have these other stakeholders who strengthen you. So when we started over on our project, it wasn't that we had failed. It wasn't that it wasn't good. It was just that we had to rethink and to restart. So don't be afraid. And ISOC is not, with the Beyond the Net project, we're not going to criticize you if you think you need to redo something or start it in a new way. One other idea for you, and these are ideas, yeah, document the project throughout. If you wait until midway through or at the end, it's really hard to go back and catch all the things that were going on from a quarterly basis or monthly. But again, these are ideas. It's not meant to create a fence around what you do, but there's just some of what we've seen from a sustainable perspective. And that's it. We didn't want to make it too complicated. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jane.
I think we also have some microphones open, so if you don't mind closing in the lower left-hand corner if you're not speaking, that's helpful. And by the way, the point that Ilda was making about work across the chapters, there's some really great projects on everything from wireless community projects to internet exchange points, to child and line protection, particularly in Istanbul. If you have ideas, check in with us because Ilda has a long list and she knows all of these projects and everyone quite well who have done things. And there may be ways to put you together with other chapters or other project leaders so that you can have good ideas from them and take a nice project that they've had and augment it or amplify it.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Jane, just double checking the chat if there is any questions.
I do want to address something that Jabu, I think it's Jabulani, yeah? Jabu from the Soweto Wireless User Group, yeah? It's a good point, and thank you for this, Jabu, about the using exchange points. You can also, I've seen the Guifi.net project in Spain, which is an excellent community commons-based approach to